The question of a female turtle is as old as the franchise itself. According to Kevin Eastman, fans asked about it constantly, usually young girls or parents trying to find a character their daughter could connect with. And for a long time, the answer was simple and unapologetic. At TurtleCon in 1992, when the panel was asked directly whether a female turtle would ever join the team, Peter Laird gave a dry no and moved on. His reasoning went deeper than personal taste. Peter considered the idea creatively bankrupt, and his objection wasn't specifically to a female turtle. It was adding more of the successful thing for its own sake. Fans and executives alike had floated suggestions like Picasso or Caravaggio, more turtles with artist names to match the four brothers. But to Peter, these were dry ideas that offered no reason to exist. By then, the tragedy of the turtles being the only ones of their kind had already become one of their defining qualities, and that was worth protecting. Other mutant turtles did appear over the years. Slash and Toka showed up as adversaries or outsiders rather than family. April was mutated for one adventure, but returned to normal by the end. The closest the franchise ever got to a fifth turtle was Kirby, but even he wasn't a fifth turtle in his own world. So if the creators were so firmly opposed to expanding the team, how did Venus de Milo end up joining it? And why does the idea of a female turtle keep finding its way back, decade after decade? Join me today as I explore the original Venus de Milo and the long shadows of her legacy. Interestingly, the path to creating Venus began during the development of a fourth live-action movie titled The Next Mutation. In that story, the turtles were going to meet Kirby, a Last Ronin mutant turtle from a parallel dimension that was actually Donatello's doppelganger. This turtle had some extrasensory powers linked to his intuition, and was also trying to stop an invasion from that other world. I covered this unproduced movie in another video you should check out as well. But as the animated series was about to go off the air, Fox Kids, or more specifically, Saban Entertainment, decided to take this opportunity to apply their Mighty Morphin Power Rangers approach to the Turtles. By the time Saban and Mirage sat together to negotiate, it was clear that they needed a new spin on the property that would separate this show from everything that had come before. Kevin floated the concept of a fifth turtle he had been developing for the unmade fourth film, which the Saban team liked, but they wanted a female turtle instead. And it wasn't negotiable. Mirage was in a difficult position. The Turtles were off the air, and they had a staff of 20 people on payroll with full medical insurance. Walking away from this deal could only have sad repercussions. Under pressure, they accepted Saban's conditions. They decided to develop the character on their own terms before handing anything over, which gave them at least some creative control over how this new character would look. More on how that decision affected Peter later. The creation of Venus de Milo was a collaboration between Mirage Studios and the show's writers and producers. Michael Dooney handled the character designs for all 5 turtles, which were then handed off to the Kyoto brothers to build the physical suits and to Playmates to develop the merchandise. Some key aspects, like the color of her bandana, took some time to get right. Early toy prototypes showed her wearing a pink bandana, and when that was changed to light blue, Leonardo was almost switched to yellow, a change you can briefly glimpse in the show's opening credits. While Venus's action figure included a tesson, some blades, daggers, a sword, and even a blowgun, none of these weapons made it into the show. The show's Bible specified that Venus used smoke bombs that could also be used as slicers and dicers, and that they would even burst on the ground into gooey glue. The reality is that Venus was powerful enough with her shinobi magic, but the magical smoke bombs were a part of her live-action arsenal. Another important mention in the Bible was her cloak, which could also serve as a shield. This was yet another element that was kind of redundant, given her use of magic. 4 people ultimately brought Venus to life on screen, Lelania Lindbergh provided her voice, Nicole Parker played the character in live action scenes, and Leslie McMichael and Shashir Inakala handled her stunts. Venus's backstory began on the same night as her brothers. She was the fifth turtle in the jar, mutated alongside them in the sewers of New York City. A current swept her downstream before Splinter could find her, carrying her all the way to Chinatown, where a shinobi shaman named Chung-E found her. Please keep in mind that while shinobi is just another word for ninja, the show used it as a separate concept. Seeing her as a sign of good fortune, he took her to China, named her Mei-Pei Chi, and raised her as his apprentice, training her in the shinobi arts with the intention of one day passing his role on to her. Over 17 years, she learned to read minds and emotions, to navigate the dream realm, and to practice a kind of mystic craft that had no equivalent in the ninjutsu her brothers were learning on the other side of the world. In the dream realm, Chung-E eventually crossed paths with Splinter, and the two traded stories about their unusual students. Chung-E told Splinter that Mei-Pei Chi meant beautiful turtle of energy, and he asked Splinter not to tell the boys she existed. Whatever his reasons, Splinter honored it. That quiet arrangement ended when Chung-E sensed something stirring in the dream realm. A creature known as the Dragon Lord was on the verge of breaking free from an ancient imprisonment. Dragons had been sealed away by magic users for centuries and were now trying to escape to take over the world. Chung-E warned Splinter directly to stay out of the dream realm. Splinter went anyway. The Dragon Lord trapped him there and then turned his attention to a final, deadly attack on Chung-E. From his deathbed, Chung-E gave Mei one final instruction: to travel to New York, find the turtles, and save Splinter's life. She arrived knowing almost nothing about the brothers she was about to meet, and quickly learned that none of them were blood relatives. During a confrontation with Foot Clan ninja, the head of a beautiful statue got severed. Feeling sorry for it, Mei brought it with her to the lair. When Michelangelo saw this, he got the idea of rebranding her Venus de Milo. She used her shinobi abilities to exorcise the evil from Orokusaki, then taught the turtles how to walk in the dream realm, guiding them through it to bring Splinter back home. Grateful, Splinter asked her to stay, as she had nowhere else to be. The rescue did come with a cost. Freeing Splinter also freed the Dragon Lord and his rank, and Venus spent the rest of the series fighting alongside the turtles against them. The novelty of a new Ninja Turtle was more than enough to bring viewers back to the franchise. The show even had a broader appeal thanks to its brand new female protagonist. As a result, Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation debuted at the top of its slot. But for Kevin and Peter, the show had become the straw that broke the camel's back. Peter believed that if the two of them had presented a united front during the negotiations, they could have pushed Venus out of the deal entirely. Instead, the compromise went through, and Peter wanted nothing further to do with the show. Kevin became the only of the two creators actively involved in production, and the distance between them, which was already significant, hardened into something permanent. Despite the friction, the concept appeared to have stuck. A female Ninja Turtle who was part of the team had made it to television, had merchandise, and a fan base. Whether she would stay was a different question. Venus blended quite nicely in the new live-action adventures, even participating in a crossover episode of Power Rangers in Space. But there was one piece of media where she was completely banned from. When Gary Carlson took over the TMNT book for its image run, he was given very direct orders not to include a female Ninja Turtle in the team. But comics across the pond were very different. The show was broadcast under the name of Hero Turtles: The Next Mutation, and some short comic stories were published inside the FBX, that is, For Boys Exclusively magazine in 1999, While her role wasn't that noticeable, she was in them. Another notorious extension of her tenure occurred on the Ninja Turtles website. Starting in 1996, the Turtles started sharing their adventures as letters to their fans. That meant that week to week, you would see each turtle tell a story from their perspective. In late 1997, Venus started her own posts along with her siblings. The section titled Venus's Venerations lasted a few years. However, these adventures shouldn't be considered an extension of the Next Mutation. They were a mix of different continuities. Venus's most important arc in the show was in a story I already covered, titled Unchain My Heart. It was in this story that we learned Venus had been carrying her master's belongings, including the shriveled heart of Va-Mi, an ancient vampire her master had imprisoned 70 years earlier. But after the death of Chang'e, Va-Mi's servants awakened their master to go after the heart, thinking his apprentice wouldn't represent that much of a challenge. Va-Mi and her servants moved to New York, where Venus became their primary target. Feeling the weight of her shinobi duties, Venus insisted that dealing with the vampire threat fell on her shoulders, even as the other turtles dismissed it as a human problem. Her early attempts to fight Va-Mi with shinobi magic fell flat because Va-Mi simply had far more experience with the mystical arts. Splinter acknowledged the elephant in the room. Venus wasn't particularly good with magic, but she was psychically sensitive and telepathically intuitive. Leaning on this, she began reading the heart's thoughts and anticipating Va-Mi's moves. When Va-Mi made her final, desperate push, Venus and the turtles used mirrors to reflect sunlight onto her, reducing her to ashes. The adventure was an opportunity for Venus to find her own identity, separate from the obligations of her master. A necessary development for a story about teenagers. It's unclear where Venus's story would have gone had the show been renewed for a second season. But why wouldn't the show continue if it was a hit for the network? Well, Saban was producing a show featuring characters they didn't own, which meant lower revenue than their other franchises, like Power Rangers. On top of that, the show was expensive to produce. Apparently, Saban tried to negotiate a larger share of the back end for an additional 26 episodes. Mirage declined the proposal, and Saban walked away. However, the decline in ratings was a deeper problem. The show started strong, ranking number 1 among kids aged 2 to 11, but ratings had dropped steeply by the end of its run. This wasn't entirely the show's fault. The entire Fox Kids network saw about a 35% ratings drop that season, as kids started shifting their attention to cable networks. This fragmented the market and drew advertisers away from broadcast networks. The cancellation of the show was the beginning of a long winter for the franchise. A winter as cold as its creators' relationship at the time. When the franchise began to recover, it did so under new management. Peter Laird bought out Kevin Eastman's stake in the property, and what followed was a genuine resurgence. A new animated series, a continuation of the comics, a revived toy line, and eventually a new film. But with Mirage under Peter's control, it was almost like Venus had never existed. Her profile and letters were removed from the website, and the concept was banned from all the adaptations of the franchise during that decade, including the cartoon and the CGI movie. By the end of the 2000s, satisfied with having told the story he wanted to tell, Peter sold the franchise to Viacom. The Turtles changed hands, but a segment of the fan base remained the same. Questions about adding a female turtle continued, and now there was also a generation that had grown up watching The Next Mutation and wanted Venus back specifically. IDW Publishing and Nickelodeon offered one answer to this dilemma. In the ongoing TMNT comic series, Jenica, a human ninja who became a turtle through a blood transfusion from Leonardo, was embraced quickly. More importantly, she proved that a female turtle could join the team without altering the origin story. When writer and artist Sophie Campbell took over the IDW series, she planned to bring Venus into the book, but those plans stalled when she was told Nickelodeon was unsure it had the rights to use the character. This situation traces back to the Saban deal. Saban Brands had been acquired by Hasbro, and somewhere in that chain of ownership, the legal status of Venus de Milo had become genuinely unclear. Nobody at Nickelodeon could confirm whether they controlled her. Having already planned the story, Sophie tried to make sense of it by replacing her with a new girl turtle named Lita. Later, while collaborating with Tom Waltz on the Armageddon Games storyline, the idea of Venus as a visitor from another world came up and generated real enthusiasm between them, but it ran into the same wall. Nickelodeon was still not sure. Eventually, there was some clarity, though it came with conditions. They could use a character inspired by Venus as long as she wasn't named Venus de Milo or Mei Pei Chi, and as long as she looked distinct enough from the Saban version. Sophie designed Bonnie, a human turned mutant frog turned mutant turtle, and gave her a finite storyline that ended with her run in the book. That version of the character later appeared on the Magic the Gathering cards. Perhaps because of the unclear custody that Hasbro and Paramount have on the character, Venus de Milo showed up again in the pages of the latest TMNT Mighty Morphin Power Rangers crossover. Even though she was never given a name, she resembled her Next Mutation iteration, except for her plastron. This version of Venus joined the team in the epilogue, but since she wasn't given a name, I'm going to assume the questions about the character's use remain unanswered. The concept of the female turtle keeps returning, but it's never quite found a permanent home. Jenica graduated to her own solo adventures outside the main cast. Venus had a finite arc, and Lita was transformed back into a human. Each time the idea appeared, it resolved itself in a way that left the core team of 4 intact. The reality is that the 4 brothers are the most recognizable and constant unit in this franchise. Recent incarnations explored the idea of an extended family with the characters we already know, including female characters like April, in more active roles than ever before. But the idea of permanently adding a 5th turtle to the team seems unlikely. Not because it's a bad idea, or because the 4 brothers are supposed to be the only specimens in their species, but because these particular 4 turtles are the brand. And on a personal note, it's already too expensive to have to buy 4 action figures to complete the set. For the sake of all our wallets, let's keep the 5th or even 6th turtle a special thing. Do you feel like Venus could have stayed as the 5th turtle? Who is your favorite 5th turtle? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the sewers.